Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm happy to be with you today. I know I say that a lot, but I really am. And today I'd like to share the start of a new week, a new topic. This week I'm going to look at the 8th chapter of the Gospel of John and see what kinds of things we can find here that might make our lives more sensible, or at least more in line with being able to see God. So let's look at the beginning, verse 1, and I'll tell a story at first. It's about a woman caught in adultery. And she was caught, it says, in the very act of adultery. And of course, in the Old Testament, it said anybody who commits adultery is to be stoned. So the religious leaders grabbed her and took her to Jesus. It wasn't so much they wanted to hear what he had to say, as much as they were trying to trick him. So let's see what happens here, beginning with verse 6. They were trying to trap Jesus into saying something they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. They kept demanding an answer. What do we do with her? What do you say? So he stood up and he said, okay, whoever has not sinned, let him cast the first stone. And it says he stooped down again and he wrote in the dust. And then here's the interesting part, verse 9. Then the accusers, when they heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them here now to condemn you? She said, no, Lord. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Well, this is a powerful story about Jesus, about you and me, about what God really wants. And as I talked about at the beginning of this, the Old Testament said that this lady was to be stoned. Now, it's interesting. It says she was caught in the very act of adultery. I'd really like to know what happened to the fella. Just sometimes scripture doesn't tell you everything, and this doesn't mention it at all. But if she was caught in adultery, then there had to be a second person involved. So I wonder what happened to him. Well, we'll let that slide. But they grab her and they take her to Jesus and they want to trap him. They want him to say something that contradicts the law of Moses. And then they got him. But he doesn't. What he says is, okay, you who are without sin, you cast the first stone. Well, that just really got every one of them. They just slithered off. They knew they were sinful. And then after a bit, Jesus looks around, he stands up, he says, okay, where are all your accusers? She says, they're not here. And he said, I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more. Now, if anybody deserved condemning, it was this woman. If anybody was absolutely, totally guilty, beyond the shadow of a doubt, it was this woman. And Jesus knew that. He really did. He didn't let her off the hook. He just had a different idea about life and about God and about you and me. Now, the thing is that in the Bible, it doesn't give us different levels of sin. Sin is sin is sin. And while this lady was caught in adultery, we don't know what the men who accused her did. It doesn't tell us. But they knew they had sinned against God. So here you have this event where Sinful people bring a sinful woman to the presence of Jesus, wanting Jesus to condemn her, but let them off the hook. You see what's happening here? It's easy to condemn. It's easy to look at the other person. It's easy to say, look what he does. Look what he says. But what about what we say? What about what we do? You know, all of us have fallen short of God's standards. We all fall in the same category as sinful people. And sometimes the most sinful, if you can quantify it, the most sinful are the biggest voices against others who sin. And when confronted with what they did, so often the response is to not acknowledge what they did, but to point fingers at what someone else did. You see it in the public rhetoric today. You see it many times throughout the Bible, throughout life. We're really good at noticing what somebody else does, but we're not so good at noticing what we do. Now, the story again doesn't give us all the information. We don't know what this woman did after this encounter. But we do know that Jesus had the chance to condemn her, and he gave her another chance. And God does the same thing to you and I. We have the chance to do something different whenever we've fallen short of God's standard. So I invite you to look at your life. Which one of these folks would you have been? Would you have been one of those who wanted her condemned? Would you have been the woman who was caught? Or would you be like Jesus and say, I'm not going to condemn you either? You know, I get this strange feeling our world would be a whole lot better if people were a little bit short on the condemning and a whole lot long on the forgiving. Well, you think about that. I'll be back tomorrow, say some more things about John chapter 8. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can, as fast as we can, to help meet your need. Thanks for listening. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.